Might help if I'm unmute. We just had a blue screen. So, lovely. But we're back now, hopefully. I've been having some issues with my PC recently, so it's time for a full refresh, I think. We're back. It did cut, yeah. It did. Let's have a look. Just getting set up here again. Oh, did it save all my thingies? Hacker man. Oh my god, hackertyper.com. Was me my internet crashed as this happened? Oh no. Yeah, that was lovely. Sorry Tim, I knew The Witcher 4 and here got you. Shut down by CD Projekt. Oh my god, completely lost track of where we were now. Damn it. We were giving some lighting feedback. Let's have a look. It might be a good idea to, after this, just like, I don't know, do a full refresh of Windows, something like that. Ugh. AI talk. Oh my god, there's so many ways that it could have shut me down. But I honestly believe it's Hudson. I'm just gonna blame Hudson. Let's see. Go back here. Let's look at an empty screen together. Let's hope that it doesn't happen again. Oh no, did I probably just jinxed it, huh? No YouTube anymore? No, Fairy Light. We're back on YouTube. Like we crashed. Had a blue screen of death over here. Welcome back. Something with memory management, so there's something for me to look at after the stream. Oh. Let's have a look. Where were we? I'm just gonna give a warning now that if it happens again, I will probably just stay offline and try to troubleshoot it. But for now, we're just gonna ignore that it happened and we're just gonna keep moving on. Thomas, have a look. So, Thomas first. And then Alex, let's see, Dale, we have to look at your work too. Joe Bates. Drama, please. Oh, Dinaz as well. And Moonlight. Yes. Oh. Double checking. Oh, man. What a nice chandelier. Yeah. I'm going to be talking about that in a bit. Cool. Okay. So Thomas was asking about some lighting feedback. Lighting and... Oh, and how to make it more interesting with stuff that already exists, right? Cool. So, lighting. I honestly think that the lighting has already dramatically improved from what we saw last time. As you can see down here. There's still some areas though. Like, looking at like some of the brighter spots, right? I don't mind this one too much, but like this one is like pretty bright, especially compared to like this area over here. So finding a solution to either like move that up and out of the way, um or just have it dimmed down or like inactive or something like that, right? That's what I would start. Because again, you kind of want to, you have like a really nice like tone variation within your environment now. It's just that one light that's really distracting at this point. So honestly, just moving it up would help a lot as well. Magma is saying, in my opinion, it's not the lighting. The textures look flat. I think that's something that Thomas will address when he's going to start the material blending as well. So hopefully that's going to be good. When it comes to the second part, right? So we talked about the lighting, making use of what already is there. I mean, you're gonna have to decide that for yourself, right? I'll give you like a couple of pointers where like these cables and these wires, they can do a lot more than they currently are doing, because you could have them coming down here, hanging here, right? You could have them connected in so many ways that you can do much more with them if you wanted to. It just, again, it depends on where you want them to be, and you also have like nice cables here. You can use them in a lot of manners, right? Try to look at like industrial factories and yeah, try to look at industrial factories and also spaceship designs. For example, Star Citizen could be like a really interesting inspiration for this, right? So like definitely more tubes and cables, because you got them lying around, right? Might as well make use of them. That could be a really interesting one. They just kind of have to make sense, right? Like you can add like tubes and cables anywhere, but they kind of has to feel like it would be logical that they're going to go to places that they're going to go, right? So that's like the most important thing. It's like the logical placement of them. Because even in this one, you kind of have like a cable. It kind of goes here. And it kind of goes like all the way up. But like nowhere, like it doesn't really connect anywhere, right? So what's the point that it's coming around the corner and then going back up? Like it might as well just go up here and then it's gonna connect like somewhere up here, right? So that's the way to think about it. Like if you're gonna have a connection here, which is fine, like just have it like connect with like something down here then, right? And also be careful with how you use these cables and like where yeah, and how loose they are. Because loose cables, they can indicate that someone was just like an engineer opening a panel, hey, quick connection here, just quickly jack it in, cool, that's it, right? Like whereas like having like organized cables can indicate that this is like, oh, this is like a very well run, like tightly controlled environment that they're in, right? So think about the sort of cables that you're using and like how you're using them too. And I think that's where we're going to come back to what Magma is saying, that everything kind of looks plastic instead of metal now. That would be like a good base to look at. So not, how would we write this down? Like, material definition is what we're looking for. Right? Because you can have plastic and you can have metal, but it needs to be readable as either or, right? Like, and what is like the surface response for some like painted metals compared to like just normal metals, right? Like, how do you vary between the two? So I think that's a great point. Also, when we add to it, because you're asking about like reuse between like what we already have, right? Is branding. Having like smaller labels, smaller bits of branding, like these sort of areas, I would do like more subtle. But do it more, like do it in more places. So you have like, I don't know, like little panel markers here. Maybe like a little panel marker here. Right? Maybe up here you have like a little panel tag. Like, and trying to incorporate that in like more areas could be interesting. Just to give it like a little bit more to look at, right? Because if you're walking around like industrial plant, like you're gonna see a lot of these tags because usually they're tagged for like still like they're still tagged for like, oh, this connection like X 189 is gonna lead to like some sort of like other connection that is tagged to like a different number, right? And usually there's like a huge thing, like a huge board where you can check like all the connections and stuff, right? Like all those panels are gonna have like their own ways, their own serial numbers. Let's see. For all its faults, Starfield has some good example for decals and sci-fi elements on panels too. I think that's a great example. Star Citizen is a good one. Phantom Liberty bunker level would be cool to look at. The bunker level. I'm totally blanking on that now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I think that game is gonna get like a lot of great ref. Alien Isolation, yeah, I don't think there's a lot of cables necessarily in Alien Isolation. It's more like clean, right? Because it's like a really old game now. If this is the game environment, are the cables going to be annoying to walk over? Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, but there's ways around that too, right? Like you can have two different types of collision. One for the feet, right? So like your foot IK, like your animation system, can still walk over it without any changes to like the camera, right? So that would be like a way to get around that. But if you just treat them as like the same collision, yeah, you're gonna have bumps in your camera too. Yeah. Have a look at that. I think or just turn off the collision. Yeah, but the issue with like turning off the collision is if you're doing a first person game and you look down, your feet are gonna like be inside of the cable, right? It is the lazy way. If you don't have a first person animation, you don't have to worry about that. Like if you can't look at your feet, like you don't care about your feet. Even worse in third person. Yeah, exactly. Maybe color some of the panels to add color variation. Only the ground has colors. Yeah, exactly. Like that could be a good way to add more. Yeah, have a look at factories, right? Like I think we talked about this last time as well. Like the road markings and like floor decals and all that kind of stuff. You can apply the same kind of thinking to the walls and stuff too, depending on how and what they're doing. But yeah, for sure, like a color accent, I would probably look into this pipe and making it like yellow or something like that to go with like the yellow scheme. Trying to kind of feel like, okay, what is like a main element that I can kind of give like a color to like spice up the whole environment, right? And like this giant tube that is going through the whole environment. It kind of feels like it would be nice to just have like color variation. Gotta go for a jog. Thanks all. Have a good day. Thanks for being here, Hudson. Appreciate it. Hello, Tim. I'm still trying to recover my code to the graphic design. I'll hopefully be back soon. Yeah, hopefully you will be back soon. Cool. But yeah. Hope that was helpful, Thomas. And then we're gonna jump on to the next person, which is Dale. I'm creating a command center based around the concept art I found from Falling Skies. I'm also using a reference from the scene in the show. That is cool. I have not seen the show, so I've got no idea. But thank you so much for subbing, Nikita. I appreciate it. Let's see. So I'm looking to help out with the scale and the placement, and any other feedback is welcome. So, scale and the placement. So in general, the first thing that I notice is that scale of things, right? Like your room feels wider than the concept. Right? It feels, especially this table, feels like pretty slim compared to like how wide you have yours, right? It kind of feels like the table should be something around this. Right? Kind of making it very slim. And then you can also, based on that, like to give you like a big overview, what I always try to do is try to pick like one thing that I can sort of use to estimate like all the other things upon, right? So this time I'm doing it with the table where I'm like, okay, let's do the table something around this area. Cool. Now if I have this table, I will probably have to move like all this stuff in as well. And let's see. This stuff kind of feels good. Maybe just scooting over the table just a little bit, but this doesn't need too much. Like I'm literally talking about like a difference from here to here or something like that, right? And then I feel like the rest of it would be good because the way that this works is also you have like a door in the back, right? So if we have a door, let's assume that's like 2 meters. I think what is the standard height measurement of like a door? It depends on the country that you're going into, but like let's say 2 meters and 10 or something, right? I don't know. For ease of use, let's just assume 2 meters for now. So that means that if this is like 180, like the door is probably going to be, 2 meters. I would probably assume that like the top of the door frame is where you want the door to be. But the reason why I'm looking at all this is because this room in general feels like it's sort of slender and pretty tight, where yours feels like it has more space to breathe, right? Like, and we can see that by like the dimensions here in the back. Right? So we have like the ending of the window and like the start of the door. Like this section over here, there's like way more space here. So I would see that I can kind of just like shrink the door over to here, which is gonna help with this move as well, because all this stuff is gonna move up, right? So we're kind of just like shrinking everything in, which helps with the feeling that this is like a command center that is just like hastily set up and like everything is just like fucking crammed in there, right? So yeah, it's gonna help. Like a tight space kind of makes us feel claustrophobic. It kind of helps with the general sense and the mood that like, oh my god, we're just like packed in here. It's desperate. Yeah. Anxiety, like all that kind of stuff kind of plays into it. So that is honestly the main thing that I would say. And then like the placement of things. I think the placement of stuff feels good. right? We just need to like compact everything together, and then we're going to get a better feel of the whole scene. It's going to be nice. So yeah, I think that's about it though. So this entire wall is going to move inwards. And then it's wider than the concept, and yeah. What you always want to do is you want to focus on the key elements of your scene. Right? I didn't see the door in the beginning, but the door is a fantastic element because they're going to have like standardized measurements, right? Even if we look at the table, like a table can have like a bunch of like varied dimensions, right? I think sort of standardized is like the height of the table, but like the rest of it, like we can make it a long table, short table, like your broad table, whatever, right? Whereas like a door is like very standardized. Fairy Light is saying, or Fairy Moonlight is saying, I would like to work more on the blockhouse step in my workflow, composition, the lights. Yeah, do it. Do it. Yeah, but thanks for sharing, Dale. Best of luck. And yeah, I think the last bit of feedback here is from Magma as well. The ceiling lamps look very repetitive, but it's hard to say in a prototype state. Yeah, a very easy tip to like deal with this is just rotate plus scale. Right? It's just take some of the lamps, scale them up, and rotate them, and just do that with a couple of them, and it's always gonna look like 10,000 times better. And it's still the same asset, right? You just rotated and scaled it. Cool. Thanks for posting your work, Dale. Yeah, YouTube is back. Next up is Alex Zanilla. We'd love to get some feedback on the composition, the colors, and the lighting. The composition, my main focus should be on the main archway. Trying to create a path towards there. The first image in my main shot. Don't know if I should make my second image the principal one. Hold up. Which is the main one? So this is number one, right? Let me tag them up. This is number one. And then number two. Oh. I cut some of them off. Okay, so that's number two over there. This is number two. And then number three is just like the overview shot. So you want the focus to be here. So that should be like our focal point. Right? Pablotas, when do you think the next team challenge should be? Funny you should ask. We just made social media posts for the next... in 3 days, we're going to open the signups for the next one. So, you want this to be the focal point. A good way to first test that is just doing like a couple of sanity checks, right? Like duplicate the image, turn it to black and white, and let the image talk to you, right? So if we were to drag it on here. Oh, that is the wrong one. Currently, nothing is really standing out. If you're just focusing on like the values, right? Like it's pretty chaotic and there's no sense of like, hey, that's where I want to look, right? there's a couple of ways to do that. So either we do that by trying to have this stand out more than it currently does, by like, oh, I'm just going to be very broad here, right? Because you will have to pick yourself. Is adding something important there, focusing on it with the lighting, focusing on it with the colors, or focusing on it with different forms. Well, colors kind of falls onto this, but different forms of contrast. Right? So importance to me is there a hero asset? Is there a statue? Is there something that is unique compared to the rest of the scene? Right? Because an archway by itself is not going to be unique enough because you have an archway over here. Right? So that by itself doesn't make it unique, even though we'd like dress it up in this matter. But also, like, there's nothing there for us to focus on because we're not seeing anything inside of it, right? Like, we're just looking at like a dark staircase that leads up to something that we can't really recognize. So if you wanted to make that stand out, give us something that we should be looking at, right? So I think you want to showcase like something like a restaurant or like a nice looking terrace or something like that. How do you make that stand out, right? First of all, we need to get rid of the staircase because that is just blocking our view from something that's important, right? Because right now, this is the amount of space that could potentially hold something important for us, right? We want to maximize that amount of space that we have here. And then if you wanna have the stuff behind it stand out, think again about what we said, right? Like, how do you make it stand out? Because right now, if it is a restaurant, like, we have a lot of restaurant stuff up here as well. So again, it's not unique. It's also dark, right? So let's make some notes. Not unique. It doesn't get any attention currently. That's stuff we need to fix, right? Because if it for example is like some of the people are saying, like if it is like a restaurant or like an entrance or something like that, maybe I could focus only on the restaurant entrance, like with the doors. Okay. You can focus on anything you want, right? Like, you're in control of the image. But the same stuff is still going to apply, right? Like, how do you make it stand out? Like, how are you going to emphasize that people are going to have to look there, right? Like, we can change the composition and we can try to make our focus somewhere else, but we need to think about like all the stuff that we thought about before, right? Like, you can make this work. Like, this can work. This can work. This chair, this random set of tables can work as well, right? Like, you as an artist can make all those things stand out if you wanted to. So you get to choose, right? You get to choose whatever you want to make stand out. It's not just like, oh, this doesn't work, so I'm going to pick something else, if you know what I'm saying. It's more important to ask the question, why? Why does it stand out? Like, why do I want it to stand out? Yeah, I think Magma is going in the same direction, right? Like, why do you want to make the archway stand out? Right? And the answer to that question is going to reveal like a whole bunch of things to you, right? Because we can make that stand out. Like, I could tell you like a whole bunch of things, right? Where, okay, we have like a stone floor. Cool. We're not gonna do a stone floor. We're gonna do like a variation of that stone floor, and we're gonna do like a nice tile floor, right? So this nice tile floor is gonna take us right to that gate. And then let's say this is a tiny gate. Let's make this guy a big gate, right? Cool. Okay. We kind of have like a big archway looking here now. Now, what I'm gonna do with that archway, right? I'm gonna add like some tiles to it because I think it looks nice. What we can do with that archway now is we can have like, I have like a bunch of string lights going across of it, right? So these are like all just like little string lights. So this gives me an excuse to add light to the place, right? So I'm adding like a bunch of string lights. Maybe I'll add like, I don't know, some let's add some interesting plants or bushes right next to it. So we're like really dressing this up to add. And with this, what I did, right? I'll try to break it down, is number one, I added scale into the mix, right? I emphasized it. Number two, I did leading lines, right? Because the road leading towards it, I emphasized that with like a different brick pattern, right? So now we have like leading lines going towards the whole thing. So we then had scale, leading lines, we then had lighting as well. With like the fairy lights, right? And now we can already see that this is going to stand out way better than it did before, because now it is unique. We're pointing towards it, like we're guiding the person, like the viewer towards it. And we're using a lot of details, a lot of lighting tricks, and we're trying to emphasize that like this is where you want to be looking, right? So I'm trying my best to make that stand out. And now the gate stands out. Now I just need to make sure that whatever like we're pulling people towards actually is interesting to look at, right? So in that case, what would we do? We would just have like a terrace behind it, and there's like, oh, nice view of the beach, like the sea or something like that. Not keeping scope in mind, of course, for this, but... And then there's like, just like the remnants of like a romantic dinner between two people, right? And even because we made the gate a bit taller, we can still have some, like a staircase leading up to it, right? But now this is also going to read better. And this is without doing any adjustments, right? Because then what I would be looking at is like, cool, now I can make this into like a nice little restaurant with like, I'm assuming you have like a logo here. We can have like string lights that kind of lead up to the gate. We have like a little bit of a secondary focal point with like a pizza oven or something like that. Right? And we can kind of work into the whole thing. And I would probably move like a bunch of these chairs to the left as well to kind of open a little bit more space. And then probably make some of the stuff that we have here like way simpler. Right? Because it's not only what we do. Oh my god, I love that this is embedded into the image. I was like, wait, let me get rid of this. Because a lot of what we do is like we can emphasize as much as we want, like all the stuff here, right? But that also means that we also need to think about it in a way where like we can add a lot of detail there, but that also means that we need to like balance it out with like removing a lot of detail elsewhere too, right? So I will deliberately like put stuff in play where I'm just like, okay, now there's just going to be a building here, right? And there can be like a little alleyway here, but this building is just going to block like most of it. right? And there can be a door or something like that. And maybe there's like a little detail with like a bell, and then maybe there's like a, let's actually have a look. Like a drain pipe or something like that. You know, but like this building is basically gonna, I'm using this building in like a very direct way to block my view of like anything that doesn't matter to the focal point, right? Because what you do have is like you have this focal point and then you have like all these lines that kind of go towards it, right? So those are nice, but like also that here it doesn't really matter, right? I'm trying to retain as much of this as I can to just like push you more towards what is supposed to be the main focal point of the scene. Right? And then we can do the same thing here where like all this stuff, all this detail doesn't matter. Cool. Build another house, right? You can honestly just like break apart like this house and like duplicate it here, right? In a different setup. So then, yeah, we're just blocking this off. And like you can see what I'm doing, right? In the grand scheme of things, I'm just trying to simplify the image so that all the detail becomes more focused around the middle. Well, I would probably turn the composition to be like according to like the rule of thirds or something like that, just to not make it like exactly in the middle of the image. But that's where all the detail currently is going, and like the focus will all be on that. And because we added so much stuff here, now this gives us like a little bit more leeway with like, okay, now we can add like cups and dinner plates and like all that kind of stuff here, because this stuff now is just there for like a little bit of flavor rather than, oh no, it's going to distract because there's not enough detail elsewhere. So yeah. Yeah, that's the way that I would do it. And like, I try to be as transparent as I can in these videos, right? Where I'm trying to explain my thought process as well, where it's like, I'm being very deliberate with where I put like a lot of my focus, like with the lights, with the details of those lights, with like the plants and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm trying to do the opposite, where I'm trying to simplify the rest of the image somewhat and try to think about like foreground, middle ground, and background, right? Yeah. I hope that was helpful. I think we're gonna keep it at that. Let me see if there was anything else in there. Colors, I've been trying to adjust the colors to pop more, to be vibrant, to not feel off. Should I do that in the materials or should I do that in the post process? So all the stuff that I said here, like that same sort of like mentality can be applied to the colors as well, right? So like, for example, you added like a lot of blue in the whole scene. Try to kind of keep that condensed to where it matters the most to you, right? Especially where it contrasts with like the oranges. Like, try to keep it, first of all, logical, and then, like, to where it matters to your composition, right? And yeah, just do that in your materials. Yeah. Cool stuff, Alex. Best of luck with that. I know that I just gave you, like, a whole list of stuff to do, but best of luck. Let me read through the chat again because I was in the zone there for a bit. Why is there blue paint on the ground? It looks so odd. Yeah, I think I agree. Like, it kind of feels like we're just dealing with like a bad paint job or something like that, right? Like this old grandpa of the village is just like painting everything, but he's like kind of forgetful, so he just like keeps spilling everywhere. Magma is asking, what are the team challenges? Oh, thank you for asking. So the team challenges are, we try to do them like multiple times a year, but it's been a while since we did them last time. But they're basically where we put teams of like 5 people together for 5 weeks and we help them make a single environment together. So the teams are randomized. we kind of have like weekly check-ins with them, and we also invite like jury members to sort of give like a point / credit system at the end. It sounds sick. How sick? How do I join? So the signups are gonna open up in a couple of days, so on the 12th, and then from that point on, you can join up. There is a selection process though, so you will have to submit your portfolio, submit what you want to do, like how much time you have available, all that kind of stuff. You have to add that to your submission. And then we basically pick teams that hopefully have like a pretty good balance. So yeah, it might mean that if you are not interested in environment art, or if you're like really at the start of your journey, like you might not get chosen for this one. But we try to do them like multiple times a year, so. Cool. Joe is asking for some feedback. Arya in our community was happy to help already though. Let me... Relief needs to be unique. Oh, sorry. Let me get the right image up. Which is just having one set of 3 leaves, UVing them, and then placing them UV copies around. That way you will have packed and perfectly aligned on the UV map. I totally agree with Arya. Like in terms of like optimization, that would be a great way to do it, because now all these leaves are like individual, where you don't really need them to be, right? And that's going to save you a lot, because we're basically going from, what are we here, to all this stuff. You're just having like, well, it's a set of 3, right? So, 3, 6. So we're basically going from like all this stuff that you have now to like just this little selection that you have. That looks like Mickey Mouse. Disney, don't sue me. But let's see. What was Joe's question? So currently it's quite high on textile density at 47 on a 2K map. Is that 47 pixels per meter on... No, 47 pixels per centimeter, right? That is quite high though. I think most games on the high end now, I mean, I don't know about most games, but like I think from what I can tell, most kind of hover around like 10 pixels per centimeter. So I'm just going to make the assumption that you can reduce like whatever you have, like just to a 1K map, and that you're going to be totally fine. Like it's probably even going to be, yeah. So that would be like the first thing. So like reduce to a 1K map. Yeah, I would assume so. Last of Us 2, like 1K per meter. So you can definitely reduce to like a 1K map. That will probably get you closer to it. And then especially because you're also going to gain like more textile density by like having more space for like everything on here, right? So keep reuse in mind. Oh no, I'm like the little kid. I ran out of space to draw. So yeah, definitely with the leaves and stuff. Definitely optimize there. What were your questions though? It's also 22k vertices in Maya. Would that be too high for a prop like this? It is a very ornate prop. I honestly cannot make a judgment on that because I'm not seeing the wireframe, right? So if you want to get like more in-depth like feedback on that, like share the wireframe next time, because that will allow me to like better help and like see like how much we're spending on the wireframe, right? I would assume that you can definitely optimize like some of the round shapes or some of the details that are like pretty small. For example, like this little cut that you have, you really need that. I'm not sure if it's like multiple cuts or just a single cut, right? But there's definitely ways that you can optimize that. And then I was also wondering if you had some thoughts on the way that I can improve the texturing details too. I think it looks good at the moment, but it lacks some of the final touches that would make it better. I would look into more texture variation. Like more layering, because right now you have a solid base, but what I'm still lacking is just like the layering that comes on top of that base, right? Like a little bit of rust, a little bit of oxidization, a little bit of color variation, all those kind of things. Like they can really help. So it's already like a solid base, right? Just that those little touches of like color variation are gonna help things stand out. It's a workshop, dirty, oily hands. That's a great way to think about it, right? Like think about like how people in this shop would interact with an object like this. And even like you have the dirty side of things, but let's say that they like clean it for inspection or something like that. You can go that route too, because that would leave like some things as well, right? Obviously it's cooler to make something dirty, but yeah, just making your base color more complex than it currently is already going to help a lot. Next up is Moonlight. But yeah, thank you, Jobate, for sharing your work. Like this is gonna look nice. I think share the wireframe if we want to be talking about that in depth, and then we can check that out. Let's see. Next we have Moonlight. Let's see, were there any questions for me above it? So far, some reflections are missing. Yeah, I kind of read through your questions in the beginning, and like it's really weird because glass is reflections, right? Where like you can not have good reflections, or like you cannot have good glass if you don't have proper reflection set up. So what you're trying to do now is kind of make like a glass look good without something that the glass can reflect, right? Which is super tricky. So that would honestly be like the first thing. Another candle story. Just love making candles. So get your reflection set up. I think there was a question about that too. Let me have a look. Because I think you mentioned something about an HDRI. Okay, so you're asking the same question twice, I think. Should I paint them manually or should I play with the environment to simulate them? Should I paint the reflections manually or bake them on a map, or should I play with the environment to simulate them? Yeah. I don't know how to create reflections in an empty environment. So usually what you could do, and this, I'm not sure about the specifics, but what you usually do is like you set up an HDRI environment, right? And then you basically stop the actual sphere that the HDRI is using from rendering. So you're basically disable that, but it will still affect like your object if you set it up in a specific way. So that's just the way that you have to set that up. So you're basically just putting in like an HDRI and then making sure that like the map only renders for reflections, but not for the actual lighting. So we don't want to render the sphere. Yeah, I'm not too sure how to set that up. I barely use any HDRIs myself. So, but I'm sure that there's going to be like a setup where you can just like type into HDRI render Unreal Engine without viewport visibility. Right? Something like that. And then the second question here is, should I use 1 or 2 meshes to simulate the refraction? Ideally 1, but you will have to look at that with your reflection setup just by itself. Also looking at your Fresnel setup, right? I like what you have going on, but I think the center is going to be too transparent, so you probably want to push this gradient to like be like a little bit more subtle here. I'll document myself about it. Yeah. And then yeah, so for the second question, I would say 1 mesh. That usually works well, because the reason why I say 1 mesh is because then that's probably like the simplest setup. As soon as you're gonna have like 2 meshes, or sure if you're gonna not sure if you're gonna run into issues if you just have 1 mesh that is like double-sided. But engines have a hard time recognizing which plane is in front of which plane. So you will oftentimes see like weird visual glitches where like Unreal things at the back of your glass is actually in front of your glass. And that looks weird. But there is, and I think it's kind of experimental and it kind of has like its own kind of issues. There is a little tick box on your asset where it says I think it says vertex sorting. And that little tick box, in your case, might need to be enabled if you're working with opacity, that you want to have like close up and you want that to look good. Have a look at that. But basically where that comes from is from like alpha sorting. And that is just like a way to tell the engine that like, oh, this needs to be sorted based on like the depth of the actual image. Right? It's going to try to use like, I mean, I'm not a technical person, but I assume that it will try to use like a depth buffer to like recognize where which plane it's going to be. But yeah, try that. But honestly, like 1 or 2 meshes, you just have to decide that once you have like your reflections in, you have the shader working really nice, and then you just have to decide like which one is the best. It's like Shazar is saying, I just run away from glass in scenes. Yeah, glass is always one of those tricky things that not a lot of people have fun with. So yeah, good luck. It is becoming easier though, but yeah, it's still super expensive, especially if we want to make it look good. And it's just like, yeah, experimenting. That's where part of the fun is, right? Cool. And then, yeah, thank you for posting your work again, yo. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with that. And then for the last one for today, we got Dinant. But I'm not sure if it's too messy. So it's currently talking about the rock, right? But I'm currently not sure if it's too messy, too visually noisy, and I'm also not completely sure about the scale. Okay, so too noisy. I'm gonna break this up in 2. No, don't paint in that layer, dummy. Noisy. Luckily, and I'm pretty sure that you have watched this yourself as well, but we have an awesome workshop by Ivana on this exact topic. How to make sure that like your different layers that you're building up, your big shapes, your medium shapes, and your small shapes, that they all work in conjunction and that they read well. I feel that you can definitely push like your big shapes more, because your silhouette doesn't really feel like it's super rocky, right? Like especially with like the surface detail that you have on top. I kind of want those big shapes to dictate like more of the silhouette. If you know what I'm saying, because right now I feel like you were kind of safe by trying to keep the silhouette some sort of intact with like the brushes that you were using. Whereas if you look at like Ivana's workshop, for example, like you can see her like use big brushes and actually like completely deforms like what she built underneath it, right? So yeah, big shapes, change the silhouette. And then basically the paths that you did, I would like classify as like medium shapes. And then the smaller shapes that you have going on, like trying to be more specific in certain areas. So that you have like a readability between like rest versus detail, right? Which is also very important. Then on to number 2, which is basically a question of, I'm also not completely sure about the scale. Are there any ways to measure something or feel the proportions of something better? So the way that we read proportions in 3D especially is because we are looking for something that we can recognize. Look up zoom of, I'm gonna add that on here. That written correctly? Yeah. I do not know what that is. Let me actually browse through quickly. I'm curious now. How do you spell it again? Zoom of the Ian. Ooh. That's cool. It's just like this little standalone kind of tune. That is so weird. Like standing by itself. It's cool though. I like it. This is actually a good example of how to make something feel big, right? We have we have like a couple of recognizable features on the tomb face itself, right? But the most important one here is the actual entranceway, right? So that door is giving us like a real sense of scale because we know how big a door is, right? That gives us like a big impression of how big this entire thing is, and it feels massive. Which, if you then look at this, it kind of does the same thing, but it feels the stone feels small, right? And if that is on purpose, that is fine. But right now, because the door is this big, we know that this rock is like, I don't know, let's say 3 meters tall, right? Like roughly. If we had to like measure this. Let's say 3 to 4. Right? Which is not that big for something that you want to be like pretty impressive, right? So that is what we were like circling back onto, right? We recognize things that we see in our daily lives, and that's how we measure proportions, right? Which is also, if you think back at like the work that we talked about today from, I think it was Dale, that was making like a little command post, right? The first thing that I was trying to latch onto was something recognizable for like a human proportion, right? The table or the door that we found out later. are really good indications of like how big something is because they have standardized proportions, right? So with a door, I can be like, okay, this tall, this wide, cool. I kind of know what's happening here. A simple thing to make this feel bigger is honestly, if you just wanted to make it feel bigger, for example, just make the door smaller, right? That would be an easy way to do that. However, you would have to change the way that you sculpt as well to kind of have some sort of like scale appropriate like surface texturing, right? So you would probably have like more silhouette changes because now we're talking about a rock that is like 20 meters tall rather than 3 to 4 meters, right? Because that is actually also an interesting point. Like, we could potentially also read into like the way that something is like sculpted and textured to indicate like how tall something is, but it is more subtle than something that's like easily recognizable to us, right? Yeah, that can indicate scale as well. Look up the city of Vigra in the Middle East. I think I know that one. Yeah. No, that's Petra, right? I'm thinking about Petra, I think. Petra is also carved in like a mountain face, right? Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is carved out of rock, though. Oh, it's not the same location, though. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, these things look so cool. Who came up with that crazy idea? Do you have any good resources to learn proper scaled environments and such? That's a good question. I don't know of any good resources. What helped me a ton is doing photography. Like just hobby photography. Like actually forcing yourself to look at things in real life helps you build like a really good understanding with how things are built and how proportional things are in real life and how different scale things are too. So yeah, I think that's the main thing that I would bring up. Like if you really want to train like your artistic fundamentals, right? I think doing something like photography helps a ton. That was probably honestly like most of the best thing that I've ever done for myself. Just like picking up photography. I don't do it on the regular now, right? I mostly did it whenever I went on like vacation or like on a trip. I just always took my camera with me. Like always. So yeah, if you wanna learn more about those things, like yeah, that would be a good way to do it. Da-da-da. Oh, McFal, I didn't see you come in here. No. It's a lot of fun. Not biased. Is the latest workshop going to be uploaded to YouTube? Yeah, it is. Karim is currently doing the edit of it. And it will probably be out like tomorrow or maybe the day after, hopefully. Like I'm hoping that we can get it to people soon. For early access, that is. And then it will take a while before we release it. In addition, Blender has built-in ArcViz for ref and modeling too. Has preset shelves and doors, etc. So like in real life scale. That is cool. I didn't know about that. That is cool. All right, people. I am gonna make sure that I post all these images. I appreciate everyone sitting through like the blue screen that I had before. Hopefully it wasn't too big of a bumpy ride. I'll see if I can like merge the two recordings, but I think that's gonna be, I don't know if that's gonna be possible. The first time that we had something like this, so I will need to figure out how that all works. McFal is doing some substance designer work for school next week. Oh shit, that's awesome. That's gonna be fun to play around with. Okay, cool. Thanks for hanging out, people. As some people were asking in the chat already, if you want to become a member, there is a link in the description to join us all and get your work reviewed on like a weekly basis. So yeah, hopefully see you there soon. And if not, have a nice evening anyway. See you next week, people. Bye-bye. Oh yeah, and of course, good night, everyone.